Okay, I think we're ready to start. Welcome everyone to our SOC 3.0, about the future of security operations. Here with me, Ricky and Chirag. Let's start with some, quick introductions, and let's have a, interesting discussion about the next iteration of SOC. Uh, Chirag, I'll ask you to go first and introduce yourself.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining this call as well. Um, I manage information security program for Marlan. We are a SaaS company, SaaS product company. We provide revenue management solutions to life sciences and high tech organizations. And my role is information security, risk management, compliance management, and privacy. I'm a DPO of the company as well.
Right. We're looking forward to hearing more about, your team and challenges and things that you have done with your team. Ricky?
Hey, Shahar, thanks. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining this webinar. My name is Ricky Arora. I'm the co-founder and COO at Observo AI. We are essentially a data pipeline company for security and DevOps data. My background has been building cybersecurity products at companies like Oracle, SAP, Rubrik, as well as Synac for the past few years, and have been privileged to work with a lot of security leaders and CISOs on some really challenging problems and providing cutting edge solutions. Really looking forward to the conversation today.
Cool. Thank Ricky. And for everyone, I'm Shahar Benador. I'm CEO and co-founder for Radiant Security. We're the company that automates SOC with AI. My background is a hybrid between Ricky and Chirag. So I've been a CISO. I've been on the practitioner side most of my career. And then being with Exobeam, I moved to the dark side to product management and learn how products are being made and got exposed to the broader challenges set that our customers have been experiencing, and started Radiant Security with Barry a few years ago to really help with this and try to bring my experience as a practitioner into more and more teams. And with that, we want to start talking about SOC, and we've been hearing, all of us have been hearing from our peers, from our customers, from our prospects about the challenges that their SOC teams are facing. And we want to have a discussion about that today and try to see what are these challenges, what are the top priorities, and how we can help them. And with that, maybe let's start with you, Ricky, this time, and let's start by attacking this almost the centerpiece of the SOC, the SIEM, the SOAR, and the XDR.
Yeah, absolutely. So, before that, I have an interesting story to tell. Really we were founded a few years ago as well to solve some of these challenges. And, really the motivation to do this came from me and my co-founder Gurjeet's time at Rubrik, where, we were essentially in the shoes of managing the platform, including SOC. And we have rapid data growth, which I know a lot of, enterprises struggle with out there. When I say data growth, telemetry, security data, et cetera. So, that was kind of the motivation, right? We were having all these challenges, was getting really hard to find the needle in the haystack that the SOC is looking for, as well as, it was becoming super cost prohibitive. So that kind of led us to the founding of Observo, right, to solve some of those challenges. So, what we have seen and what we continue to see is, numerous challenges. The big one is rapid data growth, as I mentioned, right? Data just keeps growing rapidly because of numerous different initiatives. A few years ago, it was mobile, then came cloud, right? Now it's AI, which is generating, all these models are generating a ton of telemetry, which the security teams are taking in, and the onus is on them to find kind of the threats, right? The other big challenge is that all the architectures that SOCs use today were put all the SIMs, etc., were put down a few years ago when data was still in megabytes or gigabytes, and now it's very common to see kind of the terabytes and even petabytes on a daily basis, right? So that leads to multiple challenges. Basically, huge sort of constraint on the teams as well as processes, and tools, right? And tools being the SIMs and the SOARs, etc. Finally, I will add that there's a lot of still manual processes that these teams utilize, when it comes to detection and response, they don't necessarily scale, right? All this leads to challenges in terms of, poor security posture, lack of productivity, low cost efficiency, etc.
Chirag, you're on the front line with your teams every day. Would you agree with these challenges that Ricky is highlighting?
Absolutely. I mean, he also has, I think, faced this, in his work life as well. I mean, I know he was an engineer in the past, so definitely been in this industry. There are certain areas that I look at very closely is, the burnout and alert fatigue are some of the issues that come to highlight, right? Right. And if you look at it, the prior experience that I had with the financial firm, um, single SOC analyst looking at 20,000 some alerts, it's just not feasible. It's not practical. It's not sustainable, right? How do you manage that? So alert fatigue and burnout, that's a piece that should be paid attention to. Missed or delayed threat detection actually is a risk itself, right? So if you are missing or delayed threat detection, that actually gets aligned with what, this SOC analyst received 20,000 plus alerts. Of course it's going to get delayed. Data overload, what Ricky said, management of data overload. I used to work for a global retail company, SOC, and suspicious login patterns across over 14,000 endpoints, right? So think about how much of the um, data overload and endpoint that you have to figure out where this threat is actually going. So without centralized log management and automated correlation, um, what should have taken like minutes to look at, it took days actually to manage it, right? And which is going back to the delayed threat detection problem that gets related to that. Um, some of integration issues also come in play, right? Like and in my on my side, as a practitioner, talent shortage is another problem, right? We always have SOC that is understaffed and increases workload and risk of mistakes, right? Once you have the workloads, and this is a very critical role, now you're increasing the mistakes that SOC team will make. Um, Keeping up with threats, the continuous threats that coming up and how it's dynamically changing, from the cloud to, endpoint to AI and ML type of situations where you're trying to tackle the new problems every day, that is keeping us up. It's never ending race to keep defenses current, right? And the coordination of incident response, right? During incidents, delayed in communications or unclear roles can extend the response time, and then it can increase the potential damage. And that's what we look at it closely from the as a practitioner. And Shahar, you've been practitioner. You know this very well, right? SOC is a very critical piece of the entire security strategy, and it if it is not managed well, it can be a problem for organization.
Yeah. Yeah, and reflecting on my personal experience, I was, fortunate to be in a company that also experienced rapid growth, as you mentioned, and as Ricky mentioned, and we were able to afford, best-in-class tools at the time.
Mhm.
But with that said, when I was involved with my team in building the first SOC, it kind of all blew in our faces. Like we made significant investments in great tools, and only to find out that we can barely keep up with the outcomes that they're giving us, or maybe put it even more directly, that they're trying to give us.
Yeah.
And this is to me a little bit of what kind of drove me into that space. But Chirag, what drove you into the interest of being a CISO? This is not an easy role.
It's not. There's always that next big thing that any practitioner want to do, right? Being a CISO, the role that I'm in, it's constant um, providing, the risk-related metrics to the senior management and addressing the risk that's on the hand. So consistency and accuracy, faster threat detection, resource efficiency, reducing human error, integration and automation, operational efficiency and optimization of resources, all of that come in play, right? It's not just one factor of adding a SIEM or SOAR into the strategy, but it's adding the right set of resources to align that with what governance framework that you have provided. Like what you said with your experience, there was a time when we built the SOC and we realized that building a SOC is not enough, but having a effective governance over that SOC is more important than just building a SOC. The thing is, you can put SIEM and SOAR and any other tools out there, but and also resources, but if you don't have a right governance framework, it's going to fall apart, right? You're going to miss things. So I think being a CISO is a difficult job of like proving all this, all of this. And, you're always playing, figuring out, business enablement versus, protection of brand, and how do you actually correlate that into the security strategy. So I actually came up with that, a tagline for the team is, we are business enablement with the protection of brand, and that's what our tagline is and our motto is. Now, how are we going to move forward with that strategy is important, but framework is where we start now, right?
Got it. So we have a few questions from the crowd. There's one for you, Chirag, one for Ricky. I'll start with you, Ricky. We have a question about, with the increasing data volumes, how do you recommend that organization, prioritize the logs that they want to monitor? And Chirag, then I'll put you on the spot to challenge Ricky about that.
Yeah, that's a great question. So the big challenge is that all this data we are collecting today, about 70-80% of all that data is noise, right? If you look at logs, if you look at events, metrics, what have you, a lot of it is noise. A lot of it actually do not add any value, but take up a lot of space, take up a lot of bandwidth, take up a lot of bandwidth of the SOC analyst as well, right? Because now, as Chirag mentioned as well, they have to look at all those 10,000 alerts that are being generated, and 90% of all those alerts are, maybe even more, don't really actually move the needle, don't really matter, right? So the prioritization of logs and security data specifically is super important. And really, the way to prioritize that is to keep what adds value, right? Keep the signal while reduce all the noise, take off all the noise or summarize all the noise or sample all the noise, right? So there is a sort of a classic risk-based prioritization that can be utilized starting with the most important data sets that you are ingesting today, right? That typically tends to be, anything that has to deal with network traffic, right? The firewalls, net flow or flow log data, user audit logs, any sort of authentication logs, coming from Okta or Active Directory or all of those, right? So there's a classic 80-20 here. If you focus on the 20%, which usually tends to be like the top 10, right? That's a great starting point. And then you can scale that because, boiling the ocean and doing it all together could actually be a pretty massive effort for any enterprise, right? Whether they have resources to do it or not. So, really taking that top 10 that's creating 80% of your data that usually, usually corresponds to the, 80% of the threats that you see in the SOC is a great starting point. And the final thing I'll say is, using things like machine learning and AI to actually help with that, to really automate that can also be a sort of a big plus for enterprises, and security teams who are trying to do this.
And Ricky and Chirag, with the popularity and growth of machine learning and AI applications, not that just within like everywhere within every product, obviously these are heavily reliant on data availability. Are you seeing an increase in the data that could be valuable now that it's analyzed more by machines versus people?
So I think we have to emphasize the point that yes, AI is there, but the corrective AI and the corrective decisions through AI is something that we need to figure out how we are going to make, right? So human in the loop of AI is very important. And I think some companies are going through this convincing management to use AI in the SOC, right? And aligning the AI benefits with business priorities is important. Now, business priorities for a security team is to ensure that there is monitoring, and there's it shouldn't be just a cool tech, right? What the idea is, it should be a force multiplier for limited human analysis, right? So if I'm analyzing something and if I have 5 people, how am I going to be more productive with the threats that are coming in and what logs are that should be analyzed? Now, if I can teach an engine to do that and continue to reiterate that point and making sure that that refinement of those rule sets are there, then I'm doing the job, right? Just plugging in AI doesn't work. I mean, we need to have a proper feeding and proper care. It's like any DLP solution. You put that out there, it's going to detect tens of thousands of threats or risks. How are you going to refine it such a way that it actually catches something that's important for you?
There's a lot of interest from our audience about frameworks and governance frameworks, to control AI and control the SOC. Have you adopted something specific? Can you give our audience some advice in this area?
I'll leave that to Ricky to start with, and then I'll answer.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think just on the previous point, right, I totally agree with Chirag. The fact that AI is also thrown as kind of the cool new word or the cool new trend, is not great, right? I mean, you have to really look at the benefits. You have to really look at the outcomes of what it can do for you. So totally agree with all the great thoughts there. I think the modern SOC with AI kind of layered on top is still human led, but it's augmented by AI, right? It's AI is basically that the force multiplier now that's going to help make the SOC more efficient and respond to threats faster, etc. I think around the framework, so we are more on the other side where we have basically built AI in our solution, right, in our product. So what we have done is we have used a few different frameworks, and again, this is more so to do with kind of the product development part of it, right? So things like the NIST AI framework, the top 10. So we have the OWASP top 10 on AI. We have used that. We have used the new NIST AI framework to ensure that we reliably meet those requirements, right, in terms of data privacy and hallucination control and bias models, etc. Right. So we have done a lot of work around that to ensure that our ML models, our AI models are secure and they comply to these standards.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think, there is an interesting question here in the question and answer, the chat, around a black box, right? Do you ever worry some of these AI tools turn into black boxes? This is absolutely a problem, right? And you're not alone with that concern. Let me tell you that, yes, I do worry. The black box problem is one of the biggest issue with AI in security operations when it comes to looking at it, the explainability, right, of flags that AI brings. What is malicious to AI versus what is malicious to human, right? And how do you actually make sure that there is an alignment? Automation hesitation, right? Where analysts either ignore alerts, duplicate the work, or AI does double of that work, right? Adding more layer to what you are actually supposed to detect and start analyzing it. There is look, to me, compliance and specifically privacy side of the house has always been a gray area. And as a practitioner, because you're trying to interpret the law that is not specifically written in human English, it's more privacy and legal language, right? So you're trying to figure that out, and how are you going to make the compliance and accountability there, right? And the bias and blind spots are important points when it comes to black boxing, right? Um, uh, AI models trained on biased or incomplete data can actually result in a problem, right? So again, going back to the original discussion that we had, is before relying so much on AI, we need to understand and provide the right rule sets and right information to AI to actually get you the right results. Otherwise, it's going to be a black box. It's going to be a hole. And
One of the interesting points that we have learned at Radiant is building our product. We automate the alert triage, with AI. Is that we need to provide it, as you mentioned, with a lot of context, around the threat, around the organization, around the user, around the endpoint, around the network. All those things that Ricky mentioned earlier that you need to prioritize to collect. We need to query that and provide it to the AI models, to come up with the right response. But what our users have told us completely aligns with what you said, Chirag, is kind of don't make it black box. Show us everything, right? And so, sometimes we give, a little bit too much information, but we give a
yeah,
lot of information to earn the trust, of the practitioners.
yeah, as a practitioner, you have to look at it from my point of view that I'm not a security company. My products are related to, even though I practice security for last 25 years, and my company does not produce a security tool, right? We are not a product or services of security. So my thing is I need to have the proper transparency with the tools that I use that are actually integrated in my security strategy, embedded in my security strategy. That human oversight and governance is important for me, right? Their accountability with the tools owners or vendor accountability. To me, they are all partners with me to execute my strategy, right? But how do I make them accountable for what they're producing, whether it's an AI-based integration or it's just the same or so tool? And then every bit of this has to have a measurable outcome, right? Without that measurable outcome, I will not be able to go to my senior management to say, hey, this is the risk, this is how I'm tackling it, and this is what it looks like now versus what it was in the past, right? So measurable outcomes, not just from me to my senior management, but me, I have to work it out with my partners also who are providing me these solutions, right? So um, uh, yes, black box is a problem, but then there are ways to actually come out of this to ensure that you are managing AI. AI is not managing you, right? So that's a big deal.
Yeah, those are great points. The one thing that we see work really well is the human in the loop, right? So
Mhm.
especially for any sort of critical function, right, and being able to provide sort of the human input to the AI model, right? The AI models have to be transparent in that sense, where they can take the human input and they can tweak their learnings and tweak their inferences, etc., based on kind of that human feedback loop.
Yeah.
Ricky and Chira, from your experience, what does it take for a company to let AI take action in their environment, like on its own?
Um, I haven't done that yet because I do not trust the rule sets yet to let AI make that decision. I always believe in the governance framework that is actually human in the loop. What Ricky said, I want to keep the human in the loop because I want to be ensured that the risks that I'm actually tackling are looked and analyzed because AI may not understand the business that you are in, and it depends on the industry and business that you are sitting in, regulations that you're working in with, and there are a lot of relations with security goes wider as a subject in business, and if you don't understand what business you are in and what data is important to you as classification of data, then then it's a problem, and then AI can make that wrong decision for you, and so that's why human in the loop is important. I haven't done in a practice, I haven't put AI in the model where AI made decision for me. Although detection side of the house, I have made a practice where we designed a SOC analyst that is AI-based analyst that actually gives us the knowledge of how to tackle a particular problem, but not necessarily protect from that problem. I don't want AI to go block a firewall rule. It's just, I'm not there yet.
Yeah, understood. Cool.
Yeah.
Ricky,
No,
go ahead.
I was just going to add, I totally agree with that. I think and some of this kind of, is just a life cycle, right? And we have
Yeah.
seen that life cycle repeat with different, sort of new tech and trends that come along. So I think there is still a ramp and a trust factor here. What we are starting to see is, there are, every decision is not critical. So, for some of the more, low criticality decisions, we're starting to see where users are trusting AI to make some actions. But for everything beyond that, still that human in the loop and kind of that final, check from a human is what most practitioners, I see most practitioners doing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think we have turned that into Ricky, to your point, right? Being practitioner, I want to make the best use of what I already have on hand, right? So what I've done, or what we have done actually in the organization, is try to turn that into operational efficiency, automation, having lesser time to look at and detect a threat and manage that threat. So now I've cut down the time an analyst takes of, like, let's say analyst takes 2 to 3 hours to tackle a serious problem. I've cut that down to at least 1 hour or less than 1 hour, right? And going down to that shift, goal is to bring that down to minutes, to measure that threat detection, and how are we preventing any threats coming in, right? And that's where you're making the AI more useful. Now, one analyst is doing three people's job already if you are bringing that down.
I agree with both of you. I agree with that, Ricky, on the low criticality. We're seeing about 60 to 70% of our customers are already automating some of the low criticality, actions and allowing AI to take this action, typically with some, significant restrictions. Like, for example, if it's an action on a user, they may want to exclude their executive team. Right? And so to kind of reduce the criticality of the impact. But I am seeing, I am seeing a lot of people who are more open to it than they were in previous years. And as an example, one of our customers have a corporate goal coming from top leadership to have 24, they call it virtual employees, which is a reference to AI. And they have a goal to have 2,400 virtual employees by a certain time period. And so we are just one of these 2,400, employees that they're looking for. But this kind of shows you the significance that their leadership is assigning to it. I think we're right in the middle of this. So let's, switch gears and go into, the vision of SOC 3.0. And so we talked about a lot of the challenges and some of the potential advancement. But let's talk for a minute about, what is SOC 3.0, in your perspective, from what you're hearing from peers, customers, friends.
I can get started. So yeah, I think the SOC 3.0, the modern SOC is, is AI layered on top of the existing SOC operations, right? Kind of the whole life cycle. And so what that means is, starting from the data, where now, you're ingesting really high quality data and not just pure noise or, stuff that doesn't add any value, right? And there are models that actually help the SOC teams achieve that. So the SOC teams are not sucked into, and don't have to be the data wranglers, who are trying to figure out, what's in the data, what's not in the data, kind of besides focusing on their main job of threat detection, et cetera. So I think it'll start from really high quality data, the right data that actually now goes into various tools, the data that's already enriched with some sort of intelligence that is, then basically taken into, a SIM tool, et cetera. So coming to the SIM, the SIMs are also going to be much more autonomous, using technologies like predictive analytics, having been trained on all this historical data, all the historical alerts that they have seen, right? And the results of those alerts, right? That's where human in the loop is really, really helpful, because, essentially the human has labeled those historical alerts, right? So what was a false positive, and or the system knows what was a false positive and what's actually not, right? So the high quality data coupled with predictive analytics, coupled with all this training and inference, what that basically means is that the SIM tools of this modern SOC are going to be much more autonomous. where they already have kind of, separated the alerts that the SOC team should be focused on versus all the noise, right? And again, mind you, this is not AI taking over SOC, right? So the humans still run it. We have talked about how important the human in the loop situation is. It's really the augmentation of the SOC. It's really, the that force multiplier, right? It's really, having an analyst who now, you have essentially cloned, and they can do this job of, figuring out the high quality data, figuring out, what is relevant, what is not, right? And giving information, giving insights that these analysts need to respond to those incidents in a much more effective fashion. With all the contextual data, right? Today, when something happens, there is almost like a big sort of chaos in terms of trying to figure out how to resolve issues, right? So a lot of that is going to go away because the playbooks are going to be dynamic when it comes to incident response. All that insights is going to be available in context, right, in those playbook for a much more efficient response, right? So really, as to kind of summarize, as I see this evolving in the future, it's going to be much more cost efficient, much more automated, lower incident detection and response times, eventually leading to a really good security posture for enterprises.
There's one thing you mentioned, and I want to ask both you and Chirag about it. You mentioned that you expect the future tools to be trained on the specific environment data, like what the analysts have, what calls they have made, what determinations they've made before. Any view on how would somebody do it if they don't own the SOC, if they're bringing it in-house for the first time? We're seeing a lot of customers who are considering bringing on this capability in-house now with the opportunities of SOC 3.0 in AI.
Yeah, I think we are very early in this journey. If you really look at it, yes, there are some organizations who are looking at bringing this back in, right? From, some organizations do have like their managed SOC and they're trying to bring that back into their I think it's all a business decision at the end of the day, right? And governance framework, how you are putting that together. It changes. It changes. Now you have people who are you're gonna manage on your side versus what was managed by someone else, right? And it also boils down to the measurements that you are taken, risk-based approach that you're taken for providing that. Uh, Metrics, key metrics for SOC. Look, what Ricky said is with the SOC 3.0, um, AI augmented SOC is important, but AI is managed by human. That is more important. That human loop is important in there. So if someone is saying that I'm going to bring in SOC because I have AI, I think that's not going to totally work. Yes, if they have a business decision to do so, and they have a right budget set and right alignment with the senior management, you can bring in that, definitely. But when it comes to SOC 3.0, I look at it from the point from automation. It has to be highly automated, AI augmented, meaning integration points when AI, it will help you. And from compliance side of the house, I don't want just a reactive approach, I want proactive. So these are some of the points that are very important. And at the end of all of this, SOC has to be business aligned, right? I mean, it's not just you're running your own ship, right? You're not sailing on your own. There is a business that is actually paying the bills, and you have to make sure that business has you are aligned with the business. Security strategy always cannot function on its own without understanding what the business wants to do and where the business is driving, right? So yes, there are tools out there, SIEM, SOAR, and there are a lot of things that you can do, but it boils down to threat intelligence that you want to actually mature in organization, right? And
Yeah, those
detect
are great.
and protect points. Yes, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, no, sorry, Chirag. Yeah, no, those are great points. So, Shahar, Chirag and I decided to put you on spot on this question. So, uh, I have an opinion. So I'll start with that question, which is, do you think in situations where, that data is not available, can pre-trained models be effective, right? Models that are trained on, let's say, on synthetic data, etc., can those be effective and successful where that historical data and context is not available?
Yeah, so I think that the short answer, it depends. Right? It depends on the similarities to data available in kind of public sources that AI can be either trained on or research to. So what we're seeing with our customers is that oftentimes they're seeing those attacks in their environments that they did not experience before, right? So there will be no training specific to that company. However, this potentially is a common attack that other organizations have seen. There's a lot of write-ups, research, blogs about it. And so the way we've designed Radiant with that in mind was to exactly do that, to go and research that when we have not seen it in the specific environment, to go and research that in the external world, bring this knowledge, and then execute it in the customer environment. And I believe this is exactly what the SOC team would do if they have not seen that before. And so, that is an approach that, that we have taken. It's fairly, new in the market. And as it gets more and more adoption, it will, it'll be better at scale.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I think that's exactly what we have seen as well, which is, the pre-trained models can take you up to, let's say, a good, on a scale of 10, 8, right? So you're now in a much better shape than you were. And then the rest of, kind of that, from 7 to 8 to go to 10, the ongoing training based on the context, based on, the uniqueness of the enterprise, of the security data, et cetera, and alerts, events, and all of that stuff, can then actually take you that final step, right? And really put you at a good spot.
Yeah, I think I have a little comment from the practitioner side of the house that, it is a huge time saver, but it does require a lot of modification, right? Because the environments are not the same. Not all environments are the same. So you cannot just go out. And that's what happened with the DLP originally. And I'm going back to that example, is it was like pre-built, and if you just deploy it without knowing what your environment is and without pushing your environmental rules in there, it will actually backfire on you, right? So modification and custom logics are important in there. Don't always pre-built rules don't always detect novel targeted insider threats. Some of it because your detection and your business is different. Your ideas are different, so it has to be customized a little bit, and that's what I've been seeing. Um, Eventually with all this, we call it a rule maintenance program, which you continue to support that rule maintenance program to make sure that the threats evolve and infrastructure changes apply to that. Threats change, infrastructure also change. My environment is going to change. My platform is going to change. Applications that are integrated in my environment are changing, right? Developers start using some other AI tools that are actually helping them develop a code, right? So I want to understand what is that tool doing, right? So that is a new thing. So continuously change of the environment, we have to feed into the pre-built rules. So it's a huge time saver, definitely, but the thresholds and reducing false positives are important. But I do think that adding some context and maturing that is important.
Do you see a case where AI will actually do a better job than an analyst?
Huge. I mean, that's $1 million question right there. I do see that the AI, and again, going back to my point, AI shouldn't be managing us. We need to manage AI. And for that, if we are feeding the right set of information, that's organizational context and business context and what threats you are looking for and what data is important, what environments are important to you to look for, it can do job. It can be a huge time saver. But can it replace the human and the governance? I still yet to see that.
Got it.
No
Yeah,
one
I
is
don't agree
equal,
with that.
right? I mean, Phil's comment says it all, right? AI scales, people don't, but at the same time, people need to somehow understand what AI brings and how do you actually make it use for your business, right?
And there's a question, one before field for both of you. I guess it's not for me because I'm a little biased, but it's a question from the audience. Who do you think is better poised to bring SOC AI agent to the market, the SIM vendors or an AI first company?
I'm going to ask Ricky to start with this, and then I'm going to answer. I have my own opinion, but don't want to
Yeah,
go.
absolutely. Absolutely. I can take a stab at this, right? I think I think it's gonna be the new AI companies, with some exceptions here and there, right? Like I'll make an exception for, let's say, without naming any names, excuse me, some large tech providers with significant AI investments, that have been out there for more than 20 years, right? I mean, AI is new, but AI is also not new. 15 years ago, I did my master's, and my thesis was using machine learning, right? So there are companies that have been doing this for more than 20 years. I think those will have an edge, but overall, I believe, and the reason I believe that the newer companies will do a better job is because those architectures are built to be AI first, right? It's really hard to go back and reverse engineer and put an AI band-aid on top just because those architectures from the past, they don't lend itself, to that AI life cycle, right? Starting from the data preparation to the training to having the right set of data, et cetera, and inferencing. So my opinion is it's going to be the new AI companies with a couple of exceptions here and there.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think there are two sides of this. Established vendors also will help, like the XDR SIM type of vendors. They are trusted in the for maturing their capabilities. AI first security startups are there, and they are already trying to be in that innovative space. Um, I also think that some of the MDR providers like managed services, and we just signed up with them one actually the market. They may have a better position also in this market because they already have the foundational piece, which is the basic piece of platform. Now they have to build on basis of that. Um, and I, the other day I was thinking, where is my data? My data is in cloud, right? So the platform providers may be able to help also if they are innovating in this space. Meaning, let's say AWS or Azure or OCI or Google Cloud. Um, they also have an opportunity to scale that, right? To understand and how to implement the SOC. Google already is doing with the Chronicle some of it. So yes, there are opportunities for new AI startups also to do some cool stuff because that's their core business, and the SIM or SOAR is not their core business.
Yeah. Being there in this industry for a few years now, and I've been before with Exabeam as one of the better SIM vendors out there. What I've observed is that on one hand, the SIM vendors and the MDR vendors are best suited to solve this problem. They have access to so much data that for
Yeah,
starters is that gold that is hard to get. But with that said, they have so many problems on their plates, that it's hard to find that focus, to really solve this problem at the high scale. And so that what prompted, me and Barry to really start Radiant Security. We were at a SIM company. We identified that challenge, but we couldn't get, the right focus for a good reason. We had bigger problems, bigger fish to fry. And I agree with what Ricky said. I think that there's those, and maybe what you refer to as the infrastructure vendors that they're the ones who can do it all, and I think that they're best suited to do that, and I expect that some of them will make good progress in these areas. But for the foreseeable futures, it is obvious that AI specialists like Radiant and reputable competitors that we have a leg up on top of SIM vendors.
absolutely. I think there is a question in there. Does the statement from me, Chirag, means you want to allow cloud providers? No, that's not my intent. My intent is to have a set of data and set of information that is actually readily available for me to act on, right? From security side of the house, nothing that I want data to be trained and built by cloud. Look, cloud is already doing it. Okay, if you believe it or not, right now they are already doing it on your side. So if you think that you're not giving them the permission, you're already signed up for that. So now it's the journey about where does it fit better in the tech stack, right? Do you want from the cloud side? Do you want from the AI start? I do think that AI startups have a good potential in this case because they started with the AI. Now they have to build up on top of it. But on the other side, MDR and SIM source solution providers, they have a basic platform. So now they have to build on top of what AI solution providers build, right? Innovate. So yeah. Sorry, I took a little bit more time, but I think it's this is again, it's a two-edged sword. A lot of people talk about it, right? How do we fight this problem? But look at it from this point that human have to be sitting in it regardless of what you do. Yes, someone actually said there is no transparency about how new AI startups are training their AI models. It is a gray area. A lot of things need to go in play, and it has to be mature. I'm not saying it doesn't have to be mature. AI startups are also doing their job in maturing that. Frameworks are out there that are actually now government is also pushing certain frameworks out there like what Ricky said earlier, NIST, CSF, and a few others. Um, uh, Cloud Security Alliance just came up with their own AI governance framework as well. So it's coming. That basically means that people and AI startups and other companies who are building their technology on basis of AI, they will have to adopt that, right? Eventually.
Yeah,
So it's
absolutely. I think
maturing. Yeah.
Yeah, totally agree, Chirag. The one thing, I'm starting to see a lot is enterprises, so earlier it used to be, I buy a new product, I'm gonna go through a security and privacy, due diligence, questionnaires, etc. Now what I'm seeing is, does your product use AI? Yes. So here is a questionnaire. Here's the due diligence on security and privacy, which is kind of the standard, GDPR and everything else. But then there's also a AI specific security and privacy due diligence, right? Which goes into the transparency and the black box we talked about, how do you avoid hallucinations? How do you avoid, things like biases, etc. Right? So I think it's also a bit of that maturity curve, and I think it's just starting up, and I think we'll get to that maturity curve in the future where some of these topics would become pretty obvious in terms of like the transparency, especially in the black box, etc., which has been and is a big topic right now within AI.
Yeah.
I think also I wouldn't generalize that AI startups are training their model and there's no transparency. I would not generalize it because I've seen some new AI startup companies, they've done some tremendous work in explaining and maintaining the transparency with us, with practitioners like myself or companies like myself, my company. What I mean by that is also a two-way street. Am I looking at the right set of information and am I asking the right question to that company as well, right? So because it's a gray area, even I don't have that information. So am I fully evaluating or assessing this tool or having that transparency from this tool or this product company, right? So that I think it will mature. It is still very early stage, I think.
Yes, and there's an interesting question here on another topic on the the reliance of and the future reliance of analysts on tools that use AI, and the question is, are they going to be able to function without it in the future? And so I'm curious, what's your opinion? In my view, it's almost like the smartphones. Are we able to function without them? Sure. Is it going to be the same? No. All right. So, what's your view on this?
I think it has sailed, right? I mean, the train is already out there. Now you're catching up. So if you are thinking that, am I going to rely on it? you don't have a choice at this point. We will get on that board sooner or later. Look at that way. So now it's about designing the framework, enabling our organization to make them aware that AI can actually be a problem also and not just a solution is important. To me, I understand it because I run the security organization. Do my organization understand? Because AI is not just about security now, it's being used everywhere else. And that becomes my problem as well, right? Not just the individual business problem. So that's where I think awareness is important, and because the ship has sailed, so we are just catching up and getting on board now, right?
I've heard this from one of our customers who said, if you're worried being replaced by AI, you should be worried to be replaced by a person who's using AI. And and I connect with this because I think it's not just related to SOC analysts, it's related to almost every role, in technology. But I wanted to ask you, maybe Ricky, I'll start with you. Are you concerned of being replaced by a co-founder who uses AI?
That's a great question. I hope not, but I think I think I agree with you. In fact, I was going to use the same quote, Shahar, that you used, which is, it's going to be a person who knows how to use AI better, right? And going beyond, security or SOC or kind of the topic on this discussion, right? If you look at any field, whatever job you have, that job today can be better, as a co-founder, as a whatever, using AI, right? There are so many tools available out there. So I think the point Chirag made really resonated with me. It's the awareness, right? In future, you'll have to be aware of the tools, powered by AI that you can utilize much more efficiently to be 10x more productive in your job, right? It's not going to be, the cool thing is it's not going to be the 2x, uplift in productivity we have seen with some other technology in the past, right? It's going to be literally 10x, right? So it's going to
Yeah.
be the person who understands prompt engineering, right? Who knows how to do prompts, who understands, how this works, and what areas are great with AI, what areas are not, right? I think that's kind of the worker of the future, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what's to me, and I'm going back to in personal life. My daughter was asking the other day. AI is making a lot of buzz. She's very young. She's teen now, but she's asking this because she hears this, right? And she's like, how is cybersecurity is going to shape up, or how is technology is going to be? People. I heard people going to get replaced. Like, if you can manage AI and if you can build AI, you're not going to get replaced. But if you are behind this game and trying to catch up and you are way behind, then it's a problem. You have to catch up. So it's about um, starting from the education level to all the way to practice. We all need to be aware of this tool technology and be able to adapt it and learn and how you're going to manage it. One or the other way, we will have to.
Chirag, may I ask you personally, how as a CISO you leverage AI for your role?
I use it specifically to understand industry trend, right? Let's say for an example, and I haven't used it for that example, but giving you an example is resource planning, right? How do I plan the set of resources for size of the company and industry that I'm in? What is the usual risk of the companies that are actually sitting in my position in the industry that I'm in the business that I'm in? So it's for research purposes. I do use AI significantly, actually, trying to align with what industry is doing and other companies that are my size they are doing. Um, but on the other side, I'm using it for our SOC analysis as well. We created internal knowledge base as well for different documentation and stuff through AI. We are a huge Microsoft shop here, and we are continuously building on this of what Microsoft provides as AI, enterprise version, of course. Um, we have an AI committee, that Gen AI committee that we put together, where decisions are made at central level and not just in the silos. So there's some of the practices that we have put together. And I don't think we have enough time, only 3 minutes left. So I'll let you speak. But if anyone wants to connect on that, I'll be happy to do so.
Ricky, how do you use it personally?
Yeah, great question. So I think for quite a few things, I think research is definitely one area. As Chirag mentioned, I think it's getting to a point where research without AI is almost non-existent. Just not there, right? I use it as a co-founder. I use it for a lot of content generation as well. So, it's really handy there. And there are some models. What I've seen is there are some models that do a great job at content generation, but they are not great at research and vice versa, right? So it's also a little bit of pick and choose. I've also used it very effectively to generate new templates and stuff like that, right? Where, and the one thing I've learned is the more you feed the model and the more you get better at prompt engineering, the better results the model gets you, right? That has been the big learning for me personally over the past few months, having kind of used these models. Shahar, same question for you. How do you use it?
Yeah, I use it in very similar ways to what you have described and Chirag have described. The one thing I want to add to that is legal work. Okay, it's some of my challenges is to the interface of lawyers is rough for busy founders, and so I really like how the models of the word, the ChatGPTs of the word are helping navigate some of that. Cool. I think we are at time. So, thank you everyone who joined. I want to offer to contact all of us, directly. You can find us, either, through this webinar or on LinkedIn. And we're happy to connect with peers, with other people who just want to learn more directly. So, I'm sure that all of us are happy to connect with anyone who's interested.
Thank you. Appreciate this opportunity.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, likewise.
Thank you, Chirag. It was
Have a
fun.
nice one.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, Chirag and Shahar. Thanks. Bye.